Humbert here. Today we're going to be doing Unit 1 Notes 1, which is your first video of the trimester. So today what we're going to be doing, you probably did in 8th grade, but I think it's really important to make sure we review some of that stuff so we can kind of make sure we can apply it, because a lot of what you did in 8th grade you're going to need for algebra this year as well. So we're going to start by reviewing just solving equations, something that you're going to need for as long as you take math. So let's go ahead and let's get started. The first thing I want to do is just talk about the steps you need to do in order to solve an equation. So I can talk a lot faster than you can write. So it's really important that you're pausing the videos if you need to take that time to write. It's always good to write it and then also, once you're done, be able to listen to what I say. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 1. So the first step is to simplify each side of the equal sign by distributing and combining like terms. Okay, so that's if you have something written outside of the parenthesis, you're going to go ahead and distribute that in. The next step would be to gather the variables to one side of the equal sign. Okay, so that means that we want our letters to be all on one side. So if they're on both sides, we need to do an opposite operation to get it over to the other side. Next, we want to use addition or subtraction to cancel the constant. Now, the constant is the thing that's just a number. Okay, so it doesn't have any letters with it, it's just a number. And we're going to add or subtract that over to the other side. And the final step is to use multiplication or division to cancel the coefficient. Now, the coefficient is that number that's being multiplied on the outer side, okay? So let's go ahead and let's start solving some equations. So what we're going to do, let's just go ahead and take a look at that first one. So what I want to do first is I want to combine like terms. I don't need to do step number 1. There's no distributing I need to do. But I see that I have a 1x and a 5x, so I need to add those two terms together. So 1x plus 5x is going to give me 6x. And then I have minus 5 is equal to 1. So now I can skip to step number 3. I need to get rid of this minus 5. I want to go with what's the furthest from the x first, and that's that minus 5. So I'm going to go ahead and add 5 to both sides. And then I get 6x is equal to 1 plus 5 is 6. So now I notice that 6 is being multiplied by the x. So in order to get rid of it, I need to divide both sides by 6. Well, 6 divided by 6, that's going to cancel out, so I'm just left with x. 6 over 6 here is going to give me 1. I want you guys to take notice that when you divide a number by itself, it's 1, not 0. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 2. So we're going to do some more combining of like terms. So I see on this side I have a 3a and minus a 4a. So because the 4 is bigger and that's what's negative, I'm actually going to end up with a negative 1a. And then I'm going to have plus 6 is equal to 8. So now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and I want to get that 6 over to the other side. So since I'm adding it, I'm going to go ahead and subtract it. So I have minus 6. So then I have a negative 1a is equal to 8 minus 6, which is just 2. So then I can take both sides, I can divide them by negative 1, and then I get a is equal to 2 divided by negative 1, which is a negative 2. So if you had something written as just a negative a, know that you need to divide by negative 1. You always want your letter to be positive. You're not done with the problem until your letter is positive, okay? So let's go ahead and let's take a look at our next problem here. So we're going to go ahead and grab this guy and bring him down here. So number 3, I'm going to have to do some distributing. So I need to take this 12 and I need to apply it into everything in the parenthesis that follows. So I'm going to do 12 times 2, which gives me 24, minus 12 times negative x, which is going to give me a negative 12x. Now that's equal to 36. So now the next thing I want to do, I'm going to skip step 2 because my variables are already on one side. And I need to get that 24 over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 24 from both sides. And then I get a negative 12x is equal to 36 minus 24. And when you subtract that out, you end up getting a negative 12. Or sorry, a positive 12. My bad. Positive 12. There we go. So then I need to subtract both sides by that negative 12. And when I do that, 12 divided by negative 12 is going to give me a negative 1. When you divide by a positive and a negative, your answer is going to be negative. All right, let's take a look at number 4. So I notice immediately on number 4 that my x's are not on the same side of the equation. So that's my first task, is to get them on the same side. So since it says a minus 2 here, I like to stick with positive. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2x to both sides. So 6x plus 2x is 8x, minus 11 is equal to 5. So now I need to get rid of that minus 11. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 11 to both sides. So I get 8x is equal to 5 plus 11, which is 16. So now I can go ahead and divide both sides by 8. And 16 divided by 8 is going to give me 2. So here my answer is 2. Let's take a look at number 5. Whee, that didn't work very well. Okay, so for number 5, again, I noticed that my p's are on different sides. Well, I like to keep my numbers positive. So since 8p is smaller than 10p, I'm going to subtract the 8p over. If you decided to do it the other way, it would still work. So then I get negative 2, and then 10p minus 8p is 2p. And that's equal to, oops, I already subtracted that 8p away. That's equal to a negative 1. So the next thing I need to do is I need to get that negative 2 over away from my letter. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So here I get 2p, and negative 1 plus 2 is going to give me 1. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 2, and then I get that p is equal to 1/2. So that's your final answer for number 5. Don't be afraid of fractions or decimals. If you wanted to write that as a decimal, you absolutely could. You just need to make sure you're careful of your rounding. So let's take a look at number 6. The first thing I notice in number 6 are those parentheses. So I know I'm going to have to distribute. So I'm going to start by distributing in that negative 4. So I get negative 4x, negative 4 times negative 3, that's going to give you a positive 12. Okay, whenever you multiply a negative times a negative, it's going to become a positive. And that's going to be equal to negative x. Well, I noticed that that negative x or negative 1x is hanging out by itself on the right-hand side. So since it's already by itself, I'm going to go ahead and add the 4x over to the other side. So then I get 12 is equal to negative x plus 4x, which is 3x. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 12 divided by 3 is going to give me 4. So my answer for number 6 is 4. Okay, so whoops, too far. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 7. Okay, do that, and I'll bring down number 7. So now I got a lot going on. So I'm going to go back to my steps. Step number 1 says to simplify each side of the equal sign. Okay, so I need to start by distributing. Okay, so I'm going to do 2m plus 5 is equal to 5m when I multiply 5 times m. Then 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. And then I can't forget about this minus 3m. Well, guess what? I'm still not finished with step 1. I need to simplify those two terms. So I'm going to have 2m plus 5 is equal to 5m minus 3m is 2m. And that's minus 35. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this 2m over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2m from both sides. And what happens is it cancels out on both sides. Well, that's kind of a bummer. So then I get that 5 is equal to negative 35. Well, geez, is that ever going to happen? I don't think so. So what we're going to call this is no solution because everything canceled out. So that's no solution, okay? We can write that as NS just to save ourselves the hand cramp. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 8. So again, the first thing I want to do is simplify both sides. So I'm going to start by distributing in my 3. 3 times r is 3r. 3 times 1 is 3. Minus 5 is equal to 3r minus 2. So 3 and negative 5 need to be combined. Well, 3 minus 5 is really like 3 plus a negative 5. So I'm going to have 3r, and 3 plus a negative 5 is going to give me a negative 2, which you could also write as plus a negative 2 if that helps you. And that's going to be equal to a negative 2. So the first thing, is equal to 3r minus 2. I forgot about that 3r. So now I'm going to bring that 3r over to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract it from both sides. Well, what I notice is that cancels out again. Those 3r's kind of disappear. So then I have negative 2 is equal to negative 2. Well, this time, that's a true statement. Negative 2 is equal to negative 2. So instead of no solution, we have infinitely many solutions, which means everything is a solution. And I don't want to write out infinitely many solutions because that will be a hand cramp. So I'm going to write that out as IMS. All right, let's take a look at number 9. So for number 9, we have a fraction. Okay, we have 10 is equal to 1/2 x plus 1x. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of try and deal with that fraction. So I have a 1/2 x here. Well, I know that in order for me to be able to add fractions, I have to be able to have a common denominator. So I know that any number divided by itself is 1. So what I'm going to do is instead of writing 1x, I'm going to write 2 over 2x, which is the same as 1, but it gives me the common denominator here. So then I have negative 10, and I can set that equal 1/2 x plus 2/2 x. So I'm going to keep the denominator the same when I add fractions, and then I'm going to add those numerators. 1 plus 2 is 3, and then we have an x. So now we need to simplify for this x. So I notice that's being divided by 2. So I'm going to start by multiplying both sides by 2. Okay, so then 2 times a negative 10 is a negative 20. Now those two had canceled out, so then I'm left with 3x when I multiply both sides by 2. So then what I need to do in order to solve for x is I need to divide both sides by 3. So then my answer is negative 20/3. So you can leave your answer as a fraction or you can put it as a decimal. It's up to you, but again, if you use that decimal, you need to make sure you are rounding correctly. If you're not sure how to round correctly, definitely make sure you ask me. So let's take a look at number 10. So for number 10, we need to do some distributing on this side as well as on this side. Well, the left side's pretty easy. It's not too bad. So 4 times 2r is 8r. 4 times negative 8 is negative 32. Okay. So then, when I multiply by a 1/7, students see that and they kind of freeze. But when you multiply by 1/7, that's really the same as dividing everything in that parenthesis by 7. So it's a lot easier to look at it that way. 49 divided by 7 is 7r. 70 divided by 7 is 10. Maybe. Oh, it's drawing lines for me. How nice. Is 10. Okay, so now we need to get our r's on the same side. So I'm going to take the smaller amount of r's and bring it over to the larger. So I subtracted that 7r from both sides. 8r minus 7r is r, minus 32 is going to be equal to 10. Now, since that's a minus 32, I'm going to go ahead and add 32 to both sides, and then I get that r is equal to 42. So that's my answer for number 10. So what seemed like a really scary problem didn't turn out to be so bad. So let's take a look at number 11. So number 11 is a type of problem that we call a proportion. And a proportion is when we have two fractions or two ratios that are set equal to each other. Okay, so there's a separate kind of method that we go about solving these proportions. So to solve a proportion, what we're going to do is use a method called cross multiplication. So to cross multiply, you're going to take the top and the bottom and multiply together by the top and the bottom, and you're doing that across. So I'm going to do 3 times x, which is going to give me 3x, and then I'm going to take 2, and I'm going to multiply that times x minus 2, okay, in parentheses. So notice when I took 2, I put the x minus 2 in parentheses. That's because that 2 needs to be multiplied to everything in there. So I have 3x here. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So then I'm going to bring this 2x over to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2x from both sides. Well, 3x minus 2x is just x. So then I get that x is equal to a negative 4. Okay. Now, let's take a look at number 12. So for number 12, we're going to use cross multiplication again. So I'm going to do 5 times x plus 2. Again, I need to put that parenthesis there so I remember to multiply the 5 by both terms. And then I'm going to have 6 times 3, which is 18. So then I'm going to have 5 times x, which is 5x. 5 times 2, which is 10, and that's going to be equal to 18. So now I need to get rid of that 10, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract 10 from both sides. And then I get 5x is equal to 8. So since that 5 is being multiplied by the x, I need to go ahead and divide both sides by 5. Again, here I get a fraction. Don't be afraid of them. It is a-okay. Okay? You can also write it as a decimal, but again, watch that rounding. So let's take this and try and apply it to just 2 word problems. There's just 2 of them. You can handle it. And here's a hint. Your word problems on your practice sheets are usually really similar to your note sheets, so always have your note sheets out with you while you're trying to do some of these, okay? Your school is building a new computer lab. 400 square feet of the lab will be available for computer stations. So I'm going to underline what I think is important. Okay, I have 400 square feet. Numbers and math problems are usually important. And I feel like stations is going to become important, so I'm going to underline that. Each station requires 20 square feet. Write and solve an equation to find out how many computer stations can be placed in the lab. So first thing I need to do is figure out what I want to find, and that's the number of stations. So that's what I'm going to assign my x to. My x is going to represent the number of stations. So I think about, okay, for every x station I put in there, it's going to take up 20 square feet. Okay, well, how much square feet do I have? Well, that's 400. So here's my equation is I have 20x is equal to 400. So now I'm going to solve that for x, and I'm going to divide both sides by 20. 20 divided by 20 cancels out, and I'm left with x. 40 divided by 20 is going to give me 25. Now, since this is a word problem, we need to put that into context of the problem. What did x equal? Well, x equaled stations. So that means that 25 stations are available. Let's take a look at number 14. So again, I'm going to do some underlining. So Hugo, and it's in white, so you're going to have to follow the pen. Hugo is buying a pair of water skiers that are on scale for 2/3 of the original price. After he uses a $25 gift card, the cost before taxes is $115. What is the original price of the skis? Write and solve an equation. So what are we looking for? The original price, right? So we're going to let x represent the original amount of money. Okay, so our label really is just going to be money. So he said it was on sale for 2/3 of the original price. So I'm going to take x and I'm going to take 2/3 of whatever that price was. And then he uses a 25 gift card. So I'm going to take what I owe and subtract $25 from it, from that gift card. And that's going to be equal to $115. So now what I need to do is I need to start solving for x. So I need to take that minus 25, and I'm going to go ahead and add it over to the other side. So then I get 2/3 x is equal to 115 plus 25. And when I do that, I get 140. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I see that it's being divided by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by 3. So I'm going to take 140 times 3. So I get 2x is equal to 420. So now to solve for x, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And then I end up getting 210. Now remember, we're talking about money, so I'm going to label it this way. Okay, so that concludes your note video for today. So please let me know if you have any questions or if there's any way I can help you. Thanks for listening.